someone's idea, a spark, the script, if it's fully written with family and friends and it gains traction, it lands on the desk of someone who sees the potential. And at some point, a producer gets involved and thinks enough of that script to put it on in a production. In this episode of Broadway Unscripted, we follow a script's path from first draft to final curtain. And to guide us along the journey are two extraordinary people whose producing paths have led them both separately to the top of the line, the Tonys. Welcome to Fifth Row Center, Rose Caiola and Lamar Richardson. Lamar, yeah, I'm so happy to have you both. But ladies first, Rose, it can be or cannot be a magic pixie dust that makes so many of your shows massive hits. Glenn Ross last season broke records. Sarah Snook and the Picture of Dorian Gray, which she starred and won the Tony, changed the industry. And there are almost too many more milestone productions to count, garnering 8 Tony wins in your career. And now you're breaking new ground, literally, opening your own theater. We're going to get to all of that, and welcome. Lamar, you are a man with intention. At the tender age of 33, most people are still trying to figure out their first real career, but you've already produced 10 shows. You've won 3 Tony Awards already, 2 in one single night in 2024, and this year, of course, for Ragtime. And I would be remiss to not mention you hit some very impressive milestones along the way. The youngest Black person and the 4th Black person to win a Tony as lead producer. And that list includes Ken Harper, Glenn Davis, and Oprah. It is so impressive and exciting to have both of you on. So thank you once again. Now, I have to start off by saying you too don't look like the typical Broadway producer. And I'm thinking of the cigar chomping middle-aged white guys, old Max Bialystock or Scott Rudin. But no, you guys break the mold. Thank goodness for that. But before we talk about what it is to be a producer, we do have to talk about the distinction between what is a lead producer and all those other names that you see above the title. So I want to start with you, Lamar, because I think your maiden voyage as a lead producer ended up with Ragtime. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So what were your responsibilities for that show? And how much power do you really have as the producer, as the lead producer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to first answer your initial question, so a co-producer is purely financial. Usually you're responsible for helping to secure investments for the production under the lead producer's auspices. That can be either by you writing the check yourself as a co-producer or by raising the money from third-party investors. And my career up until Ragtime was 9 productions as a co-producer where I was raising money from investors. And as a lead producer, you come involved in terms of the creative decisions, in terms of, casting, digging into notes and the creative process. You're really involved in weekly meetings that are budgetary, marketing purposes. You're really overseeing every single department of the production, pre-production before you get to that first preview, and during the entire run. You're making sure that everything is staying on the track, everything is running as according to plan, and you're really there to kind of be the conductor and also the firefighter to keep any fires out and to really keep all departments working together to make a seamless production evening after evening.
But at such a young age, you're 33 now. I don't know when you got a hold of Ragtime and made the decision to bring it to the big stage again or revive it. How did all of that get started?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, City Center had a wonderful production as a part of their City Encore season. And, Tom Curdy, he and myself, we worked together on Gypsy, New York, and the piano lesson. And basically, I went to Tom a little over a year ago as I knew that they were going to transfer it to this Lincoln Center. And I said, Tom, I really want to be involved and step into the lead producing territory. And he was gracious enough to, take it to the team. Bob Greenblatt, who I worked with on Smash, was also part of the lead producing team, and he agreed. And Kevin Ryan, also someone I worked with on Gypsy, he also agreed. So it was a collective decision to bring me on board. And then I came into the fold. It was already a moving train at that point in terms of the transfer already being in the works. But I got really see the nuts and bolts of that coming to pass. what does that look like in terms of the physical set production? How do you scale it from City Center to the Vivian Beaumont stage? What departments need to come into play to really hire additional people to bring certain set pieces in, to bring certain choreographers and all the things that really go into baking that cake per se. And I got a bird's eye view through doing that with Ragtime.
Yeah, well, okay. So we'll get into the nuts and bolts in a minute, but let me bring Rose into all of this. Now, Rose, you're a veteran producer. I went on IBDB, the Broadway League database. I counted, and correct me if I'm wrong, 56 productions that have your name listed as producer. Wow.
That sounds right.
And you're a spring chicken as well. I'm just.
Thank you for not quoting my age. It's all out there and anyone can find it, but
I'm not going to say I wouldn't do that. But whatever you are, you look a lot younger, I'm sure. You were you the lead producer on any of those particular productions? Because I know that you are the lead producer in a show that you're working on right now. But talk to us about those other shows that you worked on. What exactly was your role? What were your responsibilities?
So thank you for asking and bringing that up. There is a vast distinction between co-producer and lead producer, and it's definitely changed post-COVID because I was a part of this industry probably when Lamar was in high school. But pre-COVID, the co-producing teams were much more incorporated in the process. They had much larger influence. And for me, actually, it was a much more compelling position to attain because you really felt much more a part of the whole genesis of the experience. We attended the bi-weekly meetings. We weighed in, not that the lead producer was required to take any of our opinions or advice, but they usually listened and welcomed it, and we participated in the process. Post-COVID, all of that changed. And the co-producer position now is primarily an investment position. However, some lead managing members do incorporate their teams in different ways. And so I tend to gravitate toward lead producers, managing members that do really listen, because many of us have been in the industry for so long. And for me, the best idea wins. You never know where you'll get a little grain of wisdom. And so
what may I ask why it changed? What happened?
Well, I think that COVID changed the industry in such a serious way. I mean, changed all industries, obviously, but with that alienation of being in the same room, we were very much isolated. I think that managing members took it as an opportunity to be much more autonomous. And I think that was kind of a detrimental aspect of it. But in any case, we are where we are, and certain managing members conduct their teams differently than others. Mm-hmm. It's just a style. Certain people just want to be involved in the money aspect and not the creative aspect. I mean, for me, that's the joy, is the whole picture. So to your question regarding, did I lead produce any of those productions that you see on Broadway? No, I've been part of co-producing teams for the Broadway shows, mm-hmm. but I have been the genesis. I have been the lead producer of off-Broadway productions.
Right.
And so that is basically the same model, but on a smaller scale. And so I understand what it is to be a managing member lead, to have the concept, to be the genesis of the project, to formulate a team, and to lead the ship. Just like Lamar was discussing. I think Lamar is gone. Did he? Oh, here, his team's back. There you are.
You were saying nice things about you. I hope you heard them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So money is sort of the foundation of everything when we talk about producing, and we've always known that Broadway in particular is feast or famine. And lately, it sounds like it's become more famine, at least if you listen to Andrew Lloyd Webber, who put out a series of text on Twitter or X or whatever you call it. But I mean, what he was projecting or predicting was pretty dire. In fact, he said Broadway is in dire danger. And there was a lot that he put in there, and it made it sound awful. And he talked about $46 new musicals that opened right after the pandemic. And of those 46 new musicals, only 4 of them recouped their investment. And I mean, if you do the math, it's 8%. And so I have to ask both of you, and I'll go to you, Lamar, first. When you're trying to raise money, how do you entice an investor with that kind of track record? And the odds are so bad in terms of getting their money recouped and getting their money back. And I don't want to put a curse on Broadway or anything, but the numbers are not all that favorable, and it's hard to be optimistic. So prove to us that there is a good reason to put money into a Broadway show that you guys are producing.
Yeah, and I think Rose touched on it earlier. This is really an entire big picture, right? There's a financial component, but there's also the creative component. And first and foremost, we're all in this industry because we love the live theater experience. We wouldn't be doing it for any other reason other than that. So a big part of the enticing of investors is that experience, being a part of literally funding a show, getting to stage, coming to that opening night, meeting the stars of the show, getting to have that behind the scenes experience to really make it more of a life memory as opposed to just to write a check and never see it again. And look, the reality is it's very challenging to raise now, and you have to lean into these other ancillary reasons aside of the finances, because look, you're right, on paper, it's extremely risky, right? We're all trying our best to get budgets as responsible as possible, to manage the weekly operating expenses, all the fixed fees and royalties that go into the weekly numbers. But look, supply chain is going up. The cost of labor, the cost of union agreements, rightfully so, because people deserve to be paid accordingly, is all increasing. And look, there's an expensive nut to break even every single week, even for plays now. But the reality is Broadway is a multi-billion-dollar business that has been around for years now. It is not going anywhere. We just all, as leaders of the business, have to come together and effectively look at what can be done to help all of us succeed. It's not about, producers versus actors versus directors versus writers. We are all a part of this ecosystem that have to work hand in hand to make this work. And I think there's a lot of finger pointing going on now. That's not productive for anyone necessarily. We're not all in separate buckets. We all need to have a true meeting of the minds to make this make sense for everybody moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, have you personally experienced any difficulties trying to get investors and raise money for shows? And I will say, if you are the producer of Ragtime, I would expect that you would have a reputation where people would want to get on board to any of your shows. But even so, has it become more difficult for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the elephant in the room is here. I am a young Black producer. Okay. Historically, most Broadway funders are philanthropists, right? That have generational wealth that they bring to the table. The new investors of today are people from other industries who truly are evaluating this as an investment, which we all know on paper does not make the most sense. So I have a very difficult job of convincing bankers and lawyers and doctors and people who have not necessarily the most affinity for the arts as to why they should back this, right?
And what do you tell them? Like, what's your pitch? Let's hear it.
My pitch really is, a lot of people are truly supporting me, right? Because I've been in this industry for 15 years now. A lot of people are supporting me, and wow, you're sticking that out. I want to support you. A lot of people have ancillary Broadway interest in terms of, their daughters or their sons who want to get into it at some point. So they want to support and get a dip their toe in the water. But most people, I'm really just selling the packages, like Proof, for example, that revival that we just had. Don Cheadle and Ayo Edeberry making their Broadway debut was very exciting. They're both luminaries in the Hollywood space. And for them to come to the stage now at this time with such a known title, extremely important and enticing, right? Othello last season, Denzel Washington coming back as he gets into the latter part of his career, and Jake Gyllenhaal being alongside him, that's extremely exciting. Audra McDonald starring in Gypsy, marquee talent, marquee show coming together, that's a supernova, and unfortunately the reality is, Roma, I love new plays. But I know right now, given the economics, I'd have to be creative as I dig into that bucket in terms of putting together the pieces creatively and casting wise to make that a viable argument to get it financed and get it to the stage.
Yeah. Well, the success rate of plays is a lot better than the success rate of musicals these days. But at what is the average cost? 20 to 30 million dollars to capitalize on
Yeah, for a musical, yeah. And
all these.
plays,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
and plays now could be anywhere from 6 to 9 million.
Right, right. But I think plays have seen a lot more success in terms of recouping their investments. You can speak to that, certainly, Rose.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, first of all, I think we should all praise and cherish the co-producers, honestly, because they really are what is making this industry possible right now. I mean, without
1,000%.
them, we wouldn't be able to fund any of our shows.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so, and they are largely doing it for the love of the theater. And it is very difficult to get them involved these days with the challenges that we're facing economically. And so we do resort to tactics like who's going to be big box office, who's a name that we can put in a show that's going to immediately establish the brand so we don't have to take weeks and weeks to build an audience because we can't sustain the running costs for weeks and weeks to raise awareness like we could pre-COVID.
Mhm.
And so these tactics are being employed, put in a celebrity, put in a brand that's coming in from the West End that has a buzz already. So, those are the challenges that we're all facing right now. It would be great to be able to put in a brand new musical and give it the time to have word of mouth spread like we could before, but unfortunately we just can't.
Yeah.
And so, we all need to put our heads together and figure out a path forward.
Yeah, it's true. It seems almost impossible to get a show up that doesn't have some kind of familiar draw, whether it's
Yeah.
a celebrity or it's an IP project.
Exactly.
But then again, I always point to Operation Mincemeat as the outlier in all of that because this is a show that doesn't have any stars. And the music is all original. Nobody can.
But it came from the West End, Roma.
Yes. Okay. So
it had a buzz already.
Let's go to you on this because you are the lead producer now and also co-writer on a show that started off Broadway at the New World Stages here in New York.
Yes,
called
I'm
Rock and
super
Roll Man.
excited and super proud of Rock and Roll Man. I mean, we really did the thing, we did the journey. We did regional here. We were really beloved regionally. We did an off-Broadway development run, which garnered so much acclaim and attention. And I mean, we won the Adelco Award. We were honored by the Black community, which blew me away because it is a show about integration and desegregation and all the things that we should be striving towards still now today, which are still challenges for all of us.
And the Rock
It's
and Roll
about an
Man.
obstructionist, about a rebel, who caused a cultural shift.
Yeah, I should point out though, the Rock and Roll Man is Alan Freed, who
That's right.
was not a Black man, which makes it even more interesting because he was iconic in the 50s for bringing all the great Black music to and rock and roll music.
He had a colorblind love for music. He wasn't a missionary. He just loved this music, and these were his friends. And he's like, the world needs to hear this music. And as a result, it was a catalyst for the civil rights movement. I mean, it brought the cultures, it brought Black and white people together through love of the arts. I mean, my God, what do we need right now? We need to bring people together and we need art. And so his story, his trajectory was so important to me. And it was just very hard to find the path to Broadway to enable so many more people to learn about this story and experience this amazing music and culture. And we have original music in the show, as well as the iconic Little Richard and Chuck Berry and Scream, like all of those artists that Alan was able to help in their trajectory and make famous. And so we got interest from the UK.
Okay.
And I said, after that off-Broadway run, I couldn't go straight to Broadway because the economics just couldn't work at that moment. We didn't have enough time to build awareness. And so we did a 4-city tour in the UK, which was so well received by audiences and critics. We reimagined the show with the team over there. it's just, so we're waiting for West End Theater for spring or summer.
But this
And
is
it's so thrilling.
Rose, this is, I mean, this is key. And this kind of encapsulates the big problem with this country. You're producing a wonderful story about an American man and American music, homegrown American music. And yet you can't get it off the ground from your off-Broadway production in America. You have to go across the pond to another country. So that just speaks volumes about the problem that we have here. Also, you were able to get subsidies to produce the show in the UK. We don't have anything like that in the United States.
That's very true.
Yeah, that's very frustrating. So walk us through what happened. So you got picked up and you're on your way to opening on the West End next in the spring. Is that
Yes, I have amazing partners over there. And of course, with the subsidy of the UK government and a non-for-profit producing theater in England, in Salisbury specifically, we were able to build our show, build our production, and now it awaits. We're in a queue, of course, for a West End theater, but I'm very optimistic. I've been in touch with venue owners, and so it's just a matter of solidifying the dates. But yes, we're looking at spring, summer 2027, perhaps fall, but definitely in that time slot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a thrilling opportunity, and we could learn a lot from their model.
Yes,
and we really need to, as Lamar said, I hope he's still with us. I guess he's logging back on. But we really need to examine different strategies and potentially employ some of what they're doing, and to enable new works to be created here, the way we did before. And it really is largely a philanthropic endeavor for most of us, for most projects, until you hit it. And so let's see how we can support this artistic community better. And otherwise it really won't endure. And that would be tragic, because what would the New York City economy be without Broadway?
Yeah. New York theater garners more money than all of, I love to say this, than all of the sports franchises combined. Broadway brings,
I love hearing that.
Including off Broadway, of course.
Love it.
Even after the Knicks? I don't know.
maybe this year is the
this year's an exception.
But let's walk through the whole process. If you from beginning, I mean, as we talk about first draft to closing. First draft, how do you get your projects to begin with? What are you looking for? Is it a script? Is it a friend who says, I saw an off-Broadway show, you got to do it? Or how does it begin? And walk us through the whole process, Lamar. And I know you don't want to talk about your future projects, and I don't blame you, but hypothetically, if I were to want to produce something, how would it go? What would I do?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are different avenues to begin. But usually what it looks like most times is oftentimes agents or managers or playwrights directly are often pitching me. I'll get many submissions to, read this new play. Are you interested in securing the rights to it? And what that normally means is you pay a fee, usually for a year, sometimes 18 months or 2 years in some cases, to secure the rights to produce that play. And usually you have to secure the rights for different territories. So that could be the first class rights for Broadway, the rights for it to go to the West End, the rights to take it regionally. You can either take all of those rights and even the audio-visual rights as well for a screen adaptation, or you can pick a specific bucket as well to limit it. And then usually from there, you're then going out to raise front money, unless you already have the development capital yourself to go out and have a reading. That could be a 29-hour reading or a tier 1 workshop or whatever. But there's usually steps that you go along the way to get it in front of people. Either you're first getting it on its feet, if it's something in the earlier stages and it needs, development in terms of multiple drafts to get ready for a presentation, or, you're going out and having invited readings and you're bringing in your fellow friends to give you feedback and advice, or you're bringing in co-producers or front money investors to get people on board early so they can get excited about the project, to help you get that early capital to further develop the piece, right? And that can take, several years sometimes of multiple readings, multiple workshops, to then get to a point where you're ready to attach a legitimate cast to go transfer it to Broadway or to the West End or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
And a lot of those steps along the way, like Rose said earlier, are very capital intensive. It can take a lot of time because, you don't want to rush the process. You want to really, do it artistic justice. And, me as a producer, I started as an actor. So my way into any story is always going to be character driven and world driven. What is this saying now? What is the importance of this story and how can it bring us all together, right? That's why I love something like Ragtime, a show about 3 different walks of life coming together to turn the century, fighting for the same thing in different ways, right? And we all found our way into that story. That's the lens through which I pick anything that I attach myself to. And, I think that early work now is important more than ever, new musicals and new plays. But like Rose said earlier, capital for those sometimes are extremely hard to find because people are extremely risk averse now. And it's on us to be the visionaries to really champion those stories and champion those young budding playwrights and book writers to really show the Broadway brass that they're worthy of having their story told as well.
I think the original works that don't have that familiar appeal, whether it's comes from a movie or a famous celebrity or the music is familiar, I think it takes longer in general, right? And I go back to Hadestown, as we mentioned in the introduction, it took like 12 years to come to fruition. Something as great as Hamilton. That was like 7 years in the making with, the great Lin-Manuel Miranda at the helm. So this is not a business for the faint of heart, obviously. But, and I'm wondering though, because of the costs that are so tremendous, I guess there's a tendency to try to cut short the production, the pre-production period. And that does include fewer rehearsals. I guess you shrink the rehearsal time. Have either of you experienced a situation where you feel that a show could have been more successful had you given it a little more time, either to raise money or perfect some part of it, or give the actors a little more time to rehearse? Have you ever felt like you, unfortunately, because of the economics, you were forced to speed it up when it really needed a little more time to gel?
I think that not necessarily that it needed more time to gel, and that was the detriment as a result of having too little funding. I think that perhaps you cannot fully flesh out the vision of the show because you don't have enough money for it.
Yeah.
And that could be a detriment to realizing the full potential of the project. So like, you don't have enough money for 25 actors, you have to do it with 10, you don't have enough money for the kind of set of your dreams. You have to sacrifice on some of the creative components because it's just not affordable. I mean, I could see that being an impact to the success. I just want to segue in for 1 second, if you don't mind, Roma. I just opened up my own off-Broadway theater.
Okay.
And so I have, it's called the Mac Theater, and it's in the Lincoln Center area. We're a 199 seat venue with a beautiful big stage. And so I'm really proud to potentially be a part of the creation of new works. Like Lamar had discussed, people need places to develop their work. And so, we are an ideal venue for that.
I love that.
But it is a thrill to be providing this, which I think at a time when the city is so strapped and the theater industry is so challenged, to have a new venue, I think is going to be something that would be really helpful for a lot of creatives out there.
Oh, absolutely. Now, actually, I'm very curious about one thing. It's 199 seats. Is that number significant? Is there?
It is actually, because when you're dealing with equity contracts and off-Broadway houses, the contract is different when you're at that level, or you exceed that. we actually, we're 199, but we could potentially be 350 because all of those seats that you see are fully retractable. And we're a space that's
Huh.
100 by 70 with a 30-foot ceiling. So you could do some really like badass immersive piece in there with people walking through, or, seating all around, or, whatever it is that is the creative vision of the show. We could definitely realize it in the space.
Yeah. You were talking about considerations in terms of keeping costs low. And our mutual friend, Pat Addis, who was, extolling all your virtues to me, we were talking about a play that I'm writing right now. And first thing she said to me, and spoken like a true producer, how big is your cast? How many actors? And I mean, these are the things that matter. I wouldn't say most, but they are very important to producers, aren't they?
Listen, I went from a cast of 19 at New World Stages to a cast of 9 with 2 actor musos when I reimagined my show for the UK. You really have to be strategic and tell your story as lean and as mean as you possibly can. But I'd love to read your play sometime, Roma.
It's a good one, I'll tell you. If I do say so myself. So, Lamar, I want to ask you, how much creative input do you give yourself? And I was going to say, are you allowed? Only because the creatives out there, I'm sure, have egos and they're very protective of their artistry. So, and we've heard some horror stories about certain producers who, stick their noses into things that maybe they shouldn't be doing. What is the ideal relationship between a producer and the creatives when a show is being put together?
Yes, I love to think about it as a marriage, and a big thing for me when I'm even evaluating a project is a lot of introductory meetings to really sense out the vibe and the essence of that creative to see if we'll vibe well. Because you're right, a lot of creatives, oftentimes rightfully so, are very cagey and territorial over their material based on previous bad experiences.
Right.
And I think, a producer's job is to be the conductor of the train, to keep everything within the guardrails and create that perfect environment for the material to thrive. What that looks like for me is setting the parameters up front and really just having the conversation to manage expectations with the creative, to say, hey, this is how much capital we have for this particular reading or this particular workshop. We want to stay within these constraints. We have a reserve here for any extra things that we can move from one department to another, but it'd be great for everybody involved if we can stay within these parameters. And we always have an evolving conversation throughout that process. Should a costume budget come in over a couple $1,000s, is there some place else to pull that from? If not, we have to reevaluate. And just always just really making it about practicality. We're all working together for the betterment of this show. It's not about ego or I'm right or you're wrong. It's about this is what we have to do to get it to where we want to get it to. And just always having that active conversation, always checking in, keeping the door open. And look, sometimes things can get tense and you realize that's not a partnership that I want to revisit. And, oftentimes you have to walk away in those situations and it's for everyone's best. And then oftentimes you find your muse and it's like lightning and it's like magic and you have a long-standing relationship like the greats that we've seen throughout history.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, let me ask you both, and I'll start with you, Rose. When you're putting a show together, what are your worst fears? What do you dread most? What are you afraid of most? Getting a show.
Well, that's there are a lot of things to be afraid of, to be honest. We do this because we're passionate, we're driven, and it's our need to be. I consider, obviously, I consider producers artists, to be honest, because we need to see, we are creating the whole picture, the whole orchestra. We get this piece and we have to see who is the right person to direct it, who is the right person to choreograph, who's this specific piece. Somebody may be amazing, but may not be amazing for this particular work. The fear is, there are several, the fears are, will the creative team gel? Will they understand each other? Will you be able to navigate that in the rehearsal room with the actors and the cast? And I mean, there's a lot of human resources work that, you have to do as a producer. You know, you have to be a psychiatrist, you have to be a money manager, you have to be a visionary, you have to be all of these things. So, you know, you hope that the team that you put together, you know, works like the best orchestra ever. And then you hope that the piece that you've selected that you feel passionate about fits within the world we're living in, because otherwise audiences won't engage.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it has to resonate. And that's what I look for when I decide to work on a project.
Yeah. What about reviews?
Oh my goodness, please. Yes, of course.
I'm
We're all
not
terrified
me here.
I mean, yes, there's no question about it. I mean, reviews don't have as big an impact as they did in
True.
previous times, but certainly we need all the help we could get.
Uh-huh.
And great reviews or great quotes from reviews are something that we definitely, you know, hope and pray for. No question.
Yeah, I had interviewed Jordan Roth once, and the subject of reviews came up, and he actually said that he sort of appreciated reviews that were not quite raves, only because if it was well written, it would explain to the theater goer exactly what they're in for. And he didn't want people coming to his show being disappointed, because then they would badmouth it. So he'd almost rather people not see the show if it wasn't their cup of tea in particular. And so he appreciated that reviews could sort of tell the truth about the quality of the work, or the topic of the work that might not be up to somebody's personal interest. So it was a nice way of putting a gloss on something that could be very, very destructive to a production. What about you, Lamar? What are your worst fears?
Oh my gosh, Reddit and social media. You know, we're in this newfound era where literally from the first preview, you don't have any runway anymore to wait for the reviews, because people are on Reddit already talking about what they saw. Yeah. And a lot of times when you're working on a show that would ideally need the word of mouth runway to find its audience and to really build up a hype to get the box office going. Now when people are, you know, picking one show, two show, or three shows max, and you know, people don't have the budget for shows like they did in the past, those early Reddit reviews, even for something that's known and really well developed and designed, could be dead on arrival. Yeah. I mean, it's really terrifying. And, you know, there's all these social media personalities, you know, who I won't name, that, you know, have big followings and that say a lot of, you know, oftentimes challenging things that people rely on them as truth. And sometimes shows can just really be set up for not success early on. And by the time you get to those reviews on opening night, it's like, unless there's super raves to debunk all that has been said along the way, the damage has been done.
Well, how do you counter that? I mean, you need to flood the zone with cheerleaders, don't you?
That is something.
Family, get on Reddit.
I mean, literally, I mean, it's fascinating to me, and we all joke about it, but you know, it's kind of a thing now. Whenever a show has preview starting, you all run to Reddit to start seeing what people are saying. Because, you know,
but we also encourage audience now to use their phones in the theater. You know, film, post, film, please spread the word if you like it. Yes, exactly.
Right. We need to emphasize that more. If you like it.
If you like it. Yeah, Jordan has a very, very, very valid point.
Please give us grace if you did not like what you saw tonight until opening night.
Walk away. Well, let me ask you guys about the future of Broadway, because, you know, I mean, if you listen to Andrew Lloyd Webber, it's not very promising. But 10 years from now, what is Broadway going to look like? What is the West End going to look like? And consider that AI has been encroaching. And by the way, I should mention that one of your 56 productions, Rose, is The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I just loved to pieces. But
thank you.
The technology was just so powerful and so innovative. And I know that some critics thought that, you know, we don't want to watch video. We want to watch a live performance, which I totally disagreed with. I thought the video was so beautifully incorporated into the stage work of Sarah Snook. But what do you think Broadway's going to look like 10 years from now? Is AI going to be a plus or a minus, do you think? And what can we expect? How about you, Rose? Is that?
I mean, I hope it's going to be a plus. There's no avoiding it. It's not going anywhere. But if we could use it creatively, not to detract from the human component, but just to enhance it, to augment it, to have humans working together with it, to use it in a way that's, impressive and extraordinary, then I'm all for it.
Mhm.
And I'm also all for projection and, whatever production elements that, can speak to the work, to heighten it. Yes, let's use everything we can. Absolutely. Let the creative vision run wild. But, none of us want to go to theater and be sitting in a movie.
Mhm.
We want all the things if it's right for the piece.
Yeah.
So I think that, I'm optimistic that the evolution of theater could just continue on an upward trajectory. But I think that really what we need to focus on is the support of the creation of the work,
Yeah.
the support of the art itself.
Yeah. My producer, Karen Garfin, seems to think that with the advent of AI on the screens, on televisions and the big screens, movie theaters, that people will be hungering for the live performance, and it will only eventually enhance the Broadway theater going experience. What do you think, Lamar? What is Broadway going to look like in 10 years?
Yeah, I really agree with Rose. I think that it's important to evolve with the times, right? And I think that, theater is such a living, breathing thing that incorporates the best of society and technology at any given time. And what it looked like in the Grecian times versus what it looks like now is completely different. And as it continues to grow and adapt and mesh, I think, we all want to be riveted when we see something. You see a show like Stranger Things, and you see that kind of stagecraft that they incorporate and how they can maneuver and use all these different things to really rivet us in our seats. That it will continue. You'll continue to see projections in interactions. You'll continue to see, the immersive experience, like what's happening with Every Brilliant Thing, or these shows that have come, and people want to try different things to keep attention, keep interest. We're having attention wars now, where you're against podcasts and TV and film, and now sports are having a huge moment, right? So how do we keep the theater front and center of people's minds and people's interests, right? When you're competing against these other things, you evolve with the times. And to the other point that you mentioned earlier, I think what we're going to see capital-wise is you're going to see a shift in where that source is coming from. I think historically we've seen it coming from philanthropy and co-producers coming from, personal investments and third-party investments. I think we'll start to see it moving towards, there's a big movement in Hollywood right now where brands are infusing cash into, film and TV productions. So I do think you'll start seeing some engagement with brands where a certain major brand might want to give a production X amount of money for product placement on the set or something like that. And, I think there'll be ways to explore that and to find other sources to really open this up, because how it's historically set up, it's exclusionary, truthfully speaking. And it's kind of like an enclosed circle. If you know, or if you hit the criteria to invest, you can. And I think for the survival of it and to really expand more new work being birthed, we'll have to explore other channels of capital to come in.
Yeah. I think we have to bring this to a close, but I wanted to ask you both if there's anything that you have a burning desire to share. Otherwise, I will say thank you. Anything you want to add to our?
I just think to just follow up with Lamar and what he just said. I think we need to bring new audiences into theater. We need to, and we can do that possibly with the technology. I mean, you have people that are interested in all kinds of things, and Broadway could be something for everyone. And so we need to just encourage people just to come to shows. And if you love a show, really talk about it, tell all your friends and come to shows. But incorporating all of those new discoveries can only, I think, cause it to be more interesting to a more diverse crowd.
Yeah. Well, with you two as ambassadors, I think you're well on the way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Lamar Richardson, you are an inspiration to all those young folks out there who want to break into this very difficult business. And Rose, you are such a role model for women entrepreneurs. You've proven you can do it. And you both have explored a very challenging line of work, but you have achieved the success. You've reached the pinnacle. And I salute you both. And I say break a leg on all your future projects. So
thanks so much, Roma.
Thank you so much, Roma.
Thank you, Lamar.
Thank you,
absolute
Rose.
pleasure.
Take care. Nice meeting you.
And folks, stay with us, because coming up next, we're going to meet a Broadway historian with some haunting stories to tell you about. And I really do mean haunting. Also, in our next show, you are going to find out how I ended up with this lovely piece of hardware. So create a little bit of suspense. So thanks for watching this, but stay tuned. Fifth Row Center continues.